Awesome, we're live. Welcome to another episode of Crush Your Quota, a quick hit show where we're going to go over a salesperson's current outreach strategies. We're going to dive into the world of data and targeting to find them the right person. And then we're going to go and give them a sales strategy for initial outreach that they can go test over the next month to see if it supercharges their quota. Without further ado, today we're going to be having the pleasure of speaking with an enterprise sales director at inVia Robotics, a warehousing robotics company that's disrupting the supply chain industry. Let's give a warm welcome to Elliot Carney. Elliot, great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it. Yeah, excited.
Awesome. Without further ado, let's dive into what everyone's thinking about, robotics. Wow, that's a lot of technology right there. Can we go over, that seems like a complicated product to sell. Can we go over who exactly you're selling it to and what that sales process looks like?
Yeah, we play in a disruptive space currently. We play in the e-com space. So really a great client for us is anybody who's selling products directly to consumers in small packages, right? And that's kind of the way the industry has been moving as of the last few years, and it's really accelerated due to COVID as more people are ordering goods online. And that's where we come in and provide an ROI for these distributors.
Got it. Compared to all of the robotics companies out there, can you describe your hardware, software, what makes you stand apart from Fetch Robotics or other competitors you might have?
Yeah, there's a couple of different key differentiators that we have in the market right now. In our space, what you mostly seen, and we're a little bit late to the market, the space is only 5 years old. Most of the competitors got their products up and running 2-3 years ago, whereas we really spent the last couple extra years really dialing in our software and our products. So we feel very well positioned to take a lot of market share here. Most of the current robotics are in our space are called cobots, where a person has to interact with them, hence co, right? Where our robots can actually go and grab product directly off of shelving and bring it to a person. The other products out there, a person has to be there with the robot getting those products. So we can add in an extra layer of labor reduction with our system.
Gotcha. And with something that complicated where someone has to trust that the technology is going to actually work to improve their warehouse rather than disrupting it and making it worse, seems like a complicated thing to explain to someone. Can you talk through who the person is you're actually communicating with that has the knowledge, the authority, and the desire to work with a new form of robotics that you're offering?
Yep, we're usually dealing with industrial engineers. So some of the largest companies in the world will have a whole engineer team whose main focus is on understanding the warehousing market and coming up with solutions for their problems and automating as many processes within the warehouse as possible. So usually we're dealing with some sort of MIT grad that's got an engineering background dealing with lots of different systems, right?
It sounds like a lot of fun conversations. Yeah. When you talk about those large companies, how exactly are you determining who those large companies are before you even find the person at that company?
You know, in the past, over the last few years, we've gotten a lot of our leads from what's called the Promat trade show. There's a big industry-wide trade show where most of the big warehousing companies, 3PLs, and retailers themselves go to. And that's where most of our info has come as far as our sales reach-out campaigns for the last few years. But other than that, I use a lot of our reps, and myself included, use LinkedIn to hunt and search for those potential clients that could be a fit for us.
So you're tracking the people that go to those conferences because they're going there interested in new technology. You're going on LinkedIn to search for people. Are there specific triggers or signals that you look for on LinkedIn to tell you that other than just a title match, someone's a good fit?
Other than title match, no. Most of the data that I'm coming across is specifically detailed or specifically focused on a title match.
Got it. And then assuming that you have found the right person at the company to talk to, is that the person you eventually end up selling to, that engineer? Or do you get your foot in the door by talking to a sales rep and then the engineer follows? What's that process look like?
Usually we don't talk to a sales rep at the organization. An engineer will usually spearhead the project, get behind it. Obviously, there's more people that get involved as you get up to, you know, distributing managers, vice presidents of distribution, that sort of thing. But usually you have to deal with the engineers 95% of the time. And then if they think it's a good idea in a large organization, they usually have the power to push it through and sign off.
Got it. As far as moving forward, would you rather go after more of those people by title? Would you rather go after your competitors' clients? What do you think would work best based on what you've run for campaigns and where you've seen success?
You know, I'm not 100% sure. It'd be hard for me to answer that question. I'm really open to trying anything. My whole goal is to reach as many people as possible, as quick as possible. So any sort of extra tool that can help me, expedite that process, I'm definitely willing to have the conversation and see if it'll work.
Okay, let's dive into it. Brian, what more information do you need, or are you ready to start diving into data?
Yeah, I'm really interested in doubling down on kind of like what's working for you, Elliot. So in terms of like Promat, was Promat 2020 canceled?
Well, not fully yet, I don't believe. I think they're thinking about doing it. There might be some virtual things going on with it, but I haven't been following it closely, so I'm not sure. I think it's still going on.
Okay, cool. So I'm really interested in that because one of the best campaigns that I've ever done for clients, I've done a ton of growth campaigns for different companies, and right before the event, setting meetings, and right after the event, setting meetings. With you provided us a whole bunch of different titles: industrial engineer, warehouse manager. There was a whole bunch of different titles that you provided us. One of the best campaigns we ever ran before for a client was essentially just going through the entire supplier list of everybody that's at the trade show, and then going out to them and said, hey, are you attending the trade show? Either via email or on LinkedIn. I saw your company's going to Promat, and I think that's an interesting possibility, especially now. People are hungry for content. People are hungry for that interaction now that we're all from home. So I think that's kind of like an interesting spot. I'm going to share my screen. I think there might be something there. And then I was looking at the NRF website, the National Retailer Foundation website of the top. My concern in kind of like your targeting is out of the top 100, how many companies already like have like a reap and replace versus, already have a solution like yours versus is it completely blue ocean? Do you have to get the top 20, the top 50, or is a company like Gap somebody that you could serve?
No, there's a lot of companies on there we're currently talking to, and a lot we're trying to get in touch with as of right now. There's some that have some robotics in place already, but most haven't even fully deployed the systems that they're trying out right now. The market's pretty fresh, right?
Got it. So what I could do is I could go to a data source and provide you either we can crawl out this list of the top 100 retailers, but I have another data source I can't really say on camera, but essentially it could get you the top 200, 250 e-com sites. And then essentially from there, I think that's one good tangent. And then the other good target or other good thread, I think that would be is tackling to see if I can get the entire exhibitor and attendee list of Promat 2021 or Promat 2019. So I work with another data provider as well that gives all of the exhibitors of attendees to a particular conference. I want to see if they have that conference in there. I'll be able to pull that pretty easily. And that will give us the accounts, right? So maybe there's like the top 250 e-commerce stores, and then see how many people are presenting at Promat. I'm going to try to, I don't have those at the tip of my fingers right now, but I think I'm going to pull that and try to get you anywhere from like 100 to 500 accounts. Take that and we tackle that with the titles that you gave us before the show. And I think that's going to solve at least your immediate addressable market. I don't know if it's your total addressable market. This is something I haven't done before in terms of selling robotics to warehouses, but I think that's a good place to start.
No, I completely agree. That sounds like a good plan and a good idea. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good.
Quick question. As far as the e-commerce sites go, are the e-commerce sites the ones you're selling to? Or as far as websites go, do they have third-party suppliers that kind of sell on their behalf or deliver on their behalf through the warehouses? I'm sure that Gap and the large ones do, but do other Shopify or large sites, do they also handle their own warehousing?
I mean, you hit it on the head. Some do, some don't, right? Some use that's called 3PLs, third-party logistics companies, to handle their distribution. Some don't. Some use a combination of a little bit of both, right? So it depends on the company. The larger it is, the more likely they are taking care of their distribution themselves.
And do you already have a list of the third-party distribution companies that they're using?
That they are personally using, no, but I have some large lists of third-party distribution companies in general. But I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to match that up specifically with clients.
Got it. Okay, so if we know the strategy, we know the data that we're going after, Paul, you're up. How should we reach out to these people?
Well, it's interesting. I have a large background in the financial space, and a lot of times when I'm dealing in front of people that are like highly qualified, they went to, you know, Harvard, Yale, they've all got these like incredible degrees, and it sounds like in the engineering space you'd have that same thing. A lot of times we put these people on pedestals and we think like, yeah, we've got to get right at it. One of the things that I found out is that they're all human beings, and they make decisions the same ways that other human beings make it, and they make that decision with the creative side of their brain, the emotional side of their brain. So while the analytics and all that stuff is critically important, one of the things that I would say in your outbound is make sure that in every single touch point that you're getting with these people, that you're building some kind of rapport and treating them as a human being. At the end of the day, no matter how technical you are, no matter how smart you are, or no matter how highly credentialed you are, you want to deal with somebody that you like. So in all of the outbound that I would create, I would always try to build in some kind of rapport. You guys touched on this a little bit, but at the beginning, Elliot, you mentioned like you want to get in front of as many people as you possibly can, right? There's two different ways of looking at that. One is you want to do some kind of mass campaign that allows you to be very, very broad. But what I've found is the most effective outbound is when you could take that, narrow it down to a manageable universe based on how many people you have making outbound calls, and then go as deep as you possibly can within that range of people. So if you're not exactly sure exactly who your target market is or who the right people to talk to is, what I would suggest is vary it and make sure that you're putting it into buckets and do some A/B testing to see where you get a better response and who you get that better response with, okay? And in those outbounds, like I said, I would make sure you're building rapport, then you're getting to credibility, you're providing a solution, and then you're getting to a next step. So let me ask you a question. When you are dealing with customers, what is the value proposition that you're bringing that separates you from everybody else?
The value proposition that separates us from the other robots in the market is a more reduction in labor versus what they're seeing, right? It's an automation, full-blown reduction in a large and very hard to manage portion of labor within these facilities. A lot of these operations, the labor we're reducing, people don't like doing this job. No one likes walking around a warehouse and grabbing things off the shelf, but depending on how hot that warehouse is. So the turnover, not only the cost of labor is extremely high, but the turnover rate they have in just managing that large pool of labor is very difficult for them as well.
So you mentioned to me that you go, very much towards engineers. Have you ever thought about contacting CFOs?
Yep, I have. And usually what happens with the CFOs I talk to, they're all for it, but I need to have the initial talks with the engineers to figure out if we'll even work in their warehouse before we get to the CFO's financial status, right?
No, so that's interesting, because one of the things that we talk about when we talk about building out a great outbound, it's discovering who the right people are that you need to connect with, and then making sure that they're all at the table at the right time for when the decisions are being made. And so like that's a critical and key component that you put into your pipeline and into your sales cycle to make sure that as you're doing that outbound, you're hitting on the right people at the right times and making sure the right people are in the room so that you're doing your follow-up. The other thing that I mentioned earlier was a multi-pronged approach. And so what I found is oftentimes the client has a problem, you have a solution, and they're really interested in it, but they're not ready to solve it because they have other pressing issues going on a regular basis. So when you think about your outbound, are you scheduling it into the days of your reps, number one, so that they know when they're scheduled for outbound and what type of outbound? Do you have something like that you put into place already?
Yep.
And then are they using a multi-pronged approach with various different touch points?
Yeah. So right now our build out, so we went from being an outbound only, an outside only sales rep organization to just starting to build an inside sales team, obviously as COVID hit. So that's a lot of new process we're putting in place with our outbound calling reps right now as we speak.
No, that's awesome. And so what I would say is keep that multi-pronged approach scheduled into the calendar and then keep track of it. And then there's a method that we use quite often, which is gifting, which is knowing what stage they are in the pipeline or knowing what stage they are in the communication process, and then sending out bits of information that are not a product sale or not a product pitch, but can provide them with information to help them move that process along. And so a lot of people call it getting your touches in. We call it gifting, but it's a way to keep them moving the ball forward. Because again, even if you have the solution to their problem, they might not be ready to make that decision at that point. The number one thing that you can do in your outbound is stay top of mind with them, so that when they are ready to solve that problem, they think of you versus somebody else or another competitor. Make sense?
Agree with you 100%. Yep.
Okay.
And then
coming up on our, oh, you got one more?
I was going to say just one more thing. The last thing that I would say is make sure that your outbound reps understand their clients and their customers, who they're talking to, what position they hold, and then what the right questions are to ask. So I would recommend working on question trees, which is something that we do at the Maestro Group all the time, building them out, making sure that you understand what the objections are and what your answers are, and then what we call memorize, professionalize, and personalize. Get it down to a memorization, professionalize it so it comes out very professional, but then personalize it so you don't sound like a robot in this case, and you sound like a human being and can relate to the person on the phone.
No, agree with you 100%. That was done before I let any of my business development reps make a phone call. So yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul, for those great strategies. Thanks to everyone else for coming to Crush Your Quota. We're going to close up now. It's been about 15 minutes. Thanks for learning how inVia Robotics is going to boost their sales strategy by reaching out to the attendees of the Promat 21 conference, a robotics conference about industrial robots. We're going to get Elliot Carney 100 to 500 target accounts from that conference who are presenters or who are attendees, so he can double down on reaching out to the engineers at those companies so that he can get his robotic solution in their hands, see if it works at that warehouse, and then get all of the other decision makers at the same table so that they can pull the trigger on the decision using all of Paul's insights and all of the strategies that have already been put together by Elliot so far. So thanks everyone for coming again, and we'll see you tomorrow on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.